Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA USA. IPA USA is a USA affiliate of the International Play Association. You can find more about us at ipausa.org, and up in that top right-hand corner, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, be a friend on our Facebook page, link to our Instagram, and magically every Monday, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA USA. And with me on the porch is Mike Huber. Yay!
Hello.
So Mike is the author of Inclusion Includes Us, Building Bridges and Removing Barriers in Early Childhood, Embracing Rough and Tumble Play, Teaching with the Body and Mind, the Amazing Erik. He is like prolific. He is the co-host of the podcast Teaching with the Body and Mind, and a frequent guest on That Early Childhood Nerd, which is Heather Bernt-Santy's podcast. And he just released Inclusion Includes Us. So exciting. So Mike is the curriculum specialist for early childhood education at St. David's Center in Minnesota. So they're very cold and very wet and quite snowy and icy today. So,
well, hopefully by the time this comes out, we'll have warmed up.
It'll be spring,
we'll see.
Right? Yeah, it should be spring, I think, or maybe early May. So today, Mike's going to talk to us about the body as a thinking tool, or embodied cognition. So what do you mean when you say the body is a thinking tool?
Yeah, so this comes out of, I guess, the hive mind of my podcast, Teaching with the Body and Mind. Tom Bedard, who is known mostly for his work with sensory tables, just started talking about that, of like, what if we started thinking of the body as a thinking tool? And we've had several discussions now, so we've probably talked for hours on this, because there's always these new implications. But essentially, it's that idea that I think when we work with children or parenting our children, there's this adult bias to want kids to tell us with words what they're doing. And children are going to be a lot less, well, maybe I'll do it in reverse. Children will be a lot more sophisticated in their thinking if you think of the way they're doing things, physically doing things, as the thinking. Even like if you think of Piaget, when he talks about, children can only think of one thing at a time, or only see their point of view. It's like, well, that's actually not true if they're acting it out. Right? So if they are given toys and are acting it out, or if they are doing games with their body, they actually are much more aware. Now, it is true if you've ever played hide and seek with a 4-year-old, part of their body might be sticking out when they hide, but they are hiding because they are aware of your point of view. What they don't fully have developed is where their body starts and stops. So if their head is hidden, they forget that their arms and legs might still be showing, right? So, but in terms of what they're thinking with their body, they're showing actually they have an idea of what that is. Or if you think about pretend play, this idea that pretend play is so rule bound and we don't appreciate what it is. So when children are running around being Ninja Turtles, they don't use guns, they don't pretend to fly, they use nunchucks, and they do and eat pizza. They do the things that Ninja Turtles do, and none of the other stuff. So they're showing you that they are able to filter out different ideas and only use the ideas that fit this storyline, right? So it's actually really complex.
Well, and I keep going back to what Vygotsky taught us too, that in play, children are thinking and demonstrating a much higher level, right, of development than if we're asking them to perform a task. So it sort of blends that Piagetian and Vygotskian theories together, which is what is so interesting, that I don't think people have, that's why I'm glad we're talking about this, that people have actually connected.
Right, for sure. Yeah. And I think sometimes too, when you think about, I mean, in some ways, like, so I was going to bring this point up with thinking Lisa would be here too, and I know she couldn't make it, but when she does workshops with teachers, she doesn't tell them about the way to mix paint or to mix goo. She has them mix goo, right? And what it does is it brings in all the senses, or you know, you can smell it as you do it, you can feel it on your hands, you can experience the joy or stress depending on how you like sticky things on your hands.
Sticky things, right?
But you have an emotional reaction, all of these things that don't happen when you just have the words or if you just read the recipe. And that's not going to change your behavior. And the same is true for kids, right? That thinking is more than just the brain part of it. And so so I think that's an important part of it, even as adults. So as we talk about this, it's easy to think we're talking about young children, but that's not true, right? People of every age have this. And that's where the term embodied cognition is a psychology term that I just learned about recently, that is essentially saying the same thing. So right now, if this is the video version and not the podcast version you're listening to, if I told you directions to, you know, my house, I'd say, okay, so you turn left out the driveway, and then you're going down the street, and you'll go down the hill, and then at that light, you want to get on the highway. And if I'm pointing with my hands, you are much more likely to remember it because you've watched my body and your brain is processing the movements of my body, and you're remembering that. If I only told you the words, you're less likely to remember it. And people who work in robotics are starting to discover that that's some of the like the shortcomings of artificial intelligence, right? That
right.
If
they don't have the same level of experiences or the ability to get them, right? Because humans are programming them.
Yeah. And that's all I can say about that, because then I'm going to immediately start saying something that's wrong about that. I just know that they're realizing, even with artificial intelligence, it's not just the code itself and not just the code learning from humans' reaction to the code. It's also the physical part of that. And so, you know, it's happening in other places. And there's actually, I was going to write it down. There is a book that tries to apply embodied cognition to sort of elementary school and high school learning.
Oh yeah, right? Send me that and I'll stick it in the YouTube. One of the things that this is bringing to mind is, you know, in my college courses with students who are going to be future educators, we do lots of hands-on stuff, right? And some of it they bring in, and then some of it I have, and it's, you know, choice and everything that we like. But I'm just thinking about the one that is coming up this next Thursday, which is sensory play. So so they're bringing in sensory activities. I'm bringing in sensory activities. And I remember when we were doing creative art, which is not products, people, it's pure exploration and child choice. One class fought me just like, no, we have to do these projects. It has to. And I said, you say that because that's what you did.
Right.
So I'm going to give you another experience.
Right.
And they were like, oh, well, I don't want to get messy. I said, I have gloves. I have aprons. You don't have to participate. You can watch. And it was so funny to watch their transformation from, oh, this was so much fun. Oh, now I get it. Now I get it, because they needed the experience because they had not had it.
Yeah.
And that brings up make all these connections.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get them to make because they did it. And then they were like, oh.
And I think there's generational things. There's some generations that have had that removal from play, right? And so if you haven't experienced as much play, it's harder to think, oh, that's what school is, right? And sometimes it's just a memory thing too, right? That you remember second grade or first grade and you think that you're thinking of preschool.
Yeah.
So that happens
Right.
too.
Right.
But yeah, when you actually do, it's like, oh, and like I said, like it's the emotions. It's when you use all your senses, your brain is more active and the experience is going to be more memorable. Anything you learned from that experience is going to be more likely to go into long-term memory. And so you know, it literally is thinking, right? You know, the other side I want to make sure that I get to then is that our roles as adults is not to then go quiz people, right? So sometimes people, because they want to have, I'm watching a child do something, I have to find out how many blocks did you use, or you know, and ask these very grown-up, not more sophisticated, but things that adults tend to ask to prove that the child's learning, rather than if they're able to build a tall tower or a complex building, you know, it's really wide and long, and there's all these details. I remember watching kids build, you know, a house with a fireplace and things, you know, little 4-year-olds, like just adding these details. Like that is the thinking, that is the creativity, and that is the sophistication. Asking them to explain a fireplace or whatever would have been I mean, I will admit I was watching for a while trying to figure out what that was, you know, what the thing was. And I finally did ask, but much more out of that curiosity, open-ended, like, I don't know. I didn't ask how many blocks it took to build the fireplace, but I was so curious because they were spending so much time on this thing that I thought was like maybe a bed or something, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't tell because it was a worm's eye view of a fireplace, right? So it didn't have like a chimney attached to it. And so it was genuine curiosity when I finally did ask, because they were kind of showing me the stuff and I could not figure out like what is
I can't figure it out. Can you
but it's that thing of
describe it to me? What do we use that for?
right. But you know, just that idea that appreciating, it gives us a chance as adults to appreciate what they're doing. And of course, ways to engage, to play with children. If we take that in mind too, because I feel like sometimes I'll watch teachers just go and sit and watch somebody build something, and then they'll ask them about the building. And I think if you just built near them, you could have a conversation and you'd probably actually learn a lot more about what they're doing, but also they would, I find a lot of 4-year-olds love to take on the role of, oh, let me teach you how to build.
Right, exactly.
Right? You
well,
know?
Think of the confidence. I think that these stupid open-ended questions that sometimes we ask, right? Like how many blocks did you use? Just absolutely stops the creative processes and makes the child lose the play scenario that they were engaged in, and we just sort of break it and interfere with it because we feel like we have to ask them something academic. Instead,
it makes us feel like the teacher. Heather Bernsanti would call it playing the teacher.
Playing teacher. And instead of saying, here, let me write down exactly what they're doing, and then going back and reflecting on that, because what they are showing you is much higher than what they will tell you when you ask them and interfere with it.
And I purposely brought up the example of the Ninja Turtles too, because I feel like there is a lack of understanding around superhero play, gunplay, all those. And some of it, I think, is because people are going to these adult ideas. It's like, well, what's the educational value of that? And I already talked about, well, the inhibitory control required to do pretend play like that is huge. And the physical movement going on, like if you need to appreciate it, step back and figure out what I call it the rules of engagement, which I think I may have taken from Tim Kynard, who works with Vivian Genesser. I think I got her name right. In an article he wrote years ago, but I can't remember because I've been using it in a different way than he did. I think is what it is. But just that idea of like, if you don't know what to do as an adult, rather than stopping it, step back and start appreciating the rules they're following, their self-made rules. Peter Gray often talks about that too, right? There's these structure, the structure is there. You just have to, you can watch it and figure out what the structure is. But the same is true in play that might be more violent themed or active. And so if you start to appreciate the body itself and what it's doing.
Yes.
I think
what is so interesting is that, we place children in front of these TVs with Teenage Ninja Turtles or whatever the latest one is. And then we are curious and we don't want them to act it out.
Right.
I keep going back to the hero play, right?
Yep.
And taking what they're interested in and giving them a wide variety of understanding of what do heroes do, what should heroes do, who's a hero in your life, blah 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 blah, right? Instead of shutting it down, saying, we're not playing Superman today, or
we're
not playing Teenage Ninja Turtles, we're doing something else, which is ignoring what they're interested in learning more about.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I bet that if you actually asked, the people that, firefighters or whoever that children might think of as real life heroes, if you ask those adults, what were you interested in as a kid? Very few of them say, well, I was interested in firefighters and I just read books about firefighting. It was probably, I watched Superman rescue this person, right? So it's like so it's kind of funny that we want to push the real life thing, but children don't have that sort of binary of reality and fantasy. They're kind of mixed together.
They're kind of mixed together for them.
It's much more fun to be a princess or a fairy and save the world. But when you grow up, most people don't then actively pursue princessing as a profession. It's more like, I always enjoyed saving people. Now that I'm older, I'm thinking the way I want to do that is to become a physical therapist, or I want to be a firefighter, or whatever the thing is. But the way kids are going to start playing that is going to be very fantasy based, and they're not going to distinguish between the two. But watching that physical
behavior.
Behavior. Thank you. Actions, behaviors. Yeah. I was just suddenly realizing, like, you can also get into schema play theory with that too, right? That
absolutely,
when they're doing these different things, someday that'll be in their brain. So that's getting a little more, Piaget and that side of things, that the physical is happening so the brain can do it abstractly later. But also I think it's important to appreciate now, and then we can get into Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences of, right, but when Tom Brady's the only quarterback I know the name of, but a quarterback in football throws the ball, there's a spiral, it's spinning, which keeps it straighter. It goes at an arc with the right amount of force to land where the person who's running at the speed they're running at, they will be there by the time it lands. And he's not out there doing calculations. No. It is all by feel.
It is.
And, you'd be hard pressed to find a physicist who could even write a formula to do what any professional quarterback or when in basketball doing the free throw, anything like that. There's a difference in doing it than calculating it. And both are important. There are times when you want calculations. But
recognizing that is something that is developed through experience.
Yeah. You have to start with the physical first.
Instead of thinking, I'm going to take this hero play because I'm worried someone's going to get hurt, or I'm afraid that it's going to get out of hand, then that's not seeing where they are, where children are.
Right. Yeah.
Point in time, we're trying to put maybe adults' behavior on children, that it's going to get violent and they're going to, lose it, right?
Right.
Instead of recognizing they're just imitating and modeling. And so we should be thoughtful in how we're viewing it.
Yeah.
Instead of stopping it. And of course, if it gets, we need to remind them if it starts to get out of hand. But
that's true of anything, right?
It is.
Kids are having fun playing doctor and start swinging the stethoscopes around.
Right. You stop that. So why? And you don't stop it, but you make them aware that could hurt someone.
Right.
And that swinging. What else could we do with the stethoscope?
Right.
Whatever it is.
Or if swinging is the thing, let's go find a different place to swing, or a different thing to swing or an area to, you can use swing this over here. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I think it goes back to honoring children and not judging what they're doing, but trying to see what they're doing and figuring out where that is in their development.
Yeah.
And then allowing it to take place.
Right.
Feeling like you've been accomplished and you were a great teacher that day.
Yeah. And I want to go a little younger too, or a little, earlier in development, in thinking about just kids trying to scoop sand and put it into a bucket, or other things like that, where again, the complexity of that movement, it's easy to want to just show kids, oh, you're doing it wrong, or hey, you're spilling, and they're not going to learn how to not spill, right, if you stop them from doing it. Or if you're outside, you're not worried about that. Like, step back and appreciate how slowly the child watches, they're missing the bucket or not getting all of it in, and you can see them slow down and watch each individual motion. And they often have to, scoop up, turn their hand, each one's a very distinct motion. It's not a fluid thing that,
happens until they have
a typical
lots of
8-year-old has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so just stopping and appreciating that again as well, rather than doing it for them or trying to teach them the proper way. I mean, scissors, I think, are a big one that I notice people kind of losing patience. That's what I call it. Right? Of feeling like you have to teach them how to use scissors. It's like, no, if you just give them scissors and paper, they're going to hold it the wrong way first. And the cartilage in their wrist isn't fully developed yet anyway. So they're not going to have as much control, even if they held it the correct way. But if you give them experience and tools, materials,
and
time, they will come around to it. And I think it's the time, especially I think in America, but I don't have a lot of experience in other countries to say that. But it does seem like in America, we are always worried, like, oh, can we do this earlier? Can we, Well,
I want to go back to the one thing that you were saying. We as adults have to have longer wait times.
Yes.
Because children need that time to figure it out.
Right.
It's like, I think we stop free choice play because we're bored instead of the children being bored.
Right.
And what we need to do is we should never be bored. There's so much to learn.
Yeah.
There's so many observations you can do that really tell you where children are.
Right. And just that appreciation or joy or whatever.
Yes. And so I think we have to ask ourselves, why do I want to stop this? And this is about me because they're fine.
Right.
And so I have to really reflect on why I feel like I need to stop this. I need to be changing how I view this play time as developmental time,
right,
instead of as just recreation.
Yeah. And one thing that's helped me when I'm in the classroom is participating, not taking over play. I don't mean that, but if there's a chase game going on or Ninja Turtles,
Mm-hmm.
and usually guess who's the one who doesn't follow the rules correctly? It's me usually, because I don't know the storyline enough.
Mm-hmm.
And even I will say a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, whatever, they don't have to know the story.
Mm-hmm.
They can follow along with what other kids are doing and just sort of follow it.
Mm-hmm.
It's much harder for me. I think in the same way a kid can pick up another language, much easier than me.
Mm-hmm.
But participating in it, I start to appreciate things more.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing, an artist taught me this one, but like watching a kid scooping and shoveling, if I do it with my non-dominant hand,
oh yeah, ooh,
and suddenly I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing right now too. Like I have to kind of pause, figure out, how do I not spill it, or how do I, and so I just find that's a great way to,
ooh, I love that. I'm stealing that.
like, use my body as a thinking tool, right? And start to appreciate what's going on when I join in. And I think all of us do it for the things we like doing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I had to learn to join Princess Play too, not just
Mm-hmm.
Ninja Turtles or whatever, scooping sand I actually like doing. There's something just very calming
So
for me.
soothing and calming. It's like ocean water to me.
Yeah,
Ocean water, hearing ocean waves come to shore and the water going out and the sand all have that wonderful,
right, like
amazing memories that really help me calm down. I mean, Chris and I when we go on vacation, we want to be near water and we want to be able to hear it.
Yep.
And as soon as we hear it, shoo.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're not different, I guess, as part. No. We can also do abstract thought that children can't. But if we pause to just watch them, and again, it's watching, not listening. Well, I mean, it can be listening a little bit, but most of it you're going to see in how they interact. And then most of, even this like sort of serve and return of a conversation, part of it has to be the body. And sometimes as adults, we are the ones who don't do the so in whatever middle class American culture of making eye contact while we're talking, and it's usually the adults who aren't making eye contact. If it's a teacher, they're cutting up snack and talking to the child. If it's a parent, it might be they're checking their email on their phone. But we do a lot of that rather than saying, hold on a second, I have to do this, and then give them that attention. Yeah, do the serve and return, whatever it is culturally for you. And that's all about the body too, right? And children are trying to pick up on it. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on. And there's sort of this innate need to have at least the serve and return in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, culturally, it's different, right? For every single person. But unless we model it and unless they're able to see it, then they can't imitate it.
Right.
And so do we want to be talking to people and be on our phone while we're talking to them so that we don't have that exchange or not, right?
Yeah. And I often tell parents, like, if you need to do stuff, especially parents when they're working from home and their child's home, like, just be really clear with your child. Right now, I'm doing this, but then pause and take 2 minutes. And you're still going to get both done a lot quicker than if you try to talk while you're emailing or, and also for some kids, it's like, do you want to sit on my lap while I finish this? Right. So then it's again, using the body. I'd say it's more of an emotional connection than thinking, but also I don't think there's an easy line between thinking and emotions either, thinking and feeling. But having that, if we get too in our head, we can forget that, I can still have body language welcoming this child while I'm doing my parental thing, or and then in a classroom, I would say that often it's like, if you have to get snack ready, what kids can help you? Like if a child really wants your attention, it's like, hey, I have to do this. do you want to help me do it? And hopefully, if you're not doing it currently, that you figure out how to do it more and more with kids involved in tasks. Because I know teachers struggle with, how do I get this thing done that has to happen?
Right.
And give attention to kids. And some of them can't, like, you can't have a child change another child's diaper. But so there are times when this is really an adult task.
This is something I have to do. This is something that needs to be done, but I'll be with you in just a second.
Yeah.
Right.
But then not to short change, or, like the physical thing that is needed. And again, it's like, as long as it's intentional, the amount of time isn't as important as the intentionality. So being aware of your own body language, your own, and even, I will say that sometimes kids can read your body language, even if you say something verbally, but are, your shoulders are scrunched up, or you're like rolling your eyes, or hopefully no one's doing that, but, but even just the slight, like, lack of intentionality is noticed.
And I think that, and for teachers, it can be exhausting, right? Because you want to be focused, you want to be intentional, you want to be observing, you want to be present, you want to be engaged. So you have to recognize that you can't do that for 8 hours
every single kid the entire day. Yes,
every single kid every day. So you need to give yourself, don't think that you have to be the perfect teacher. We're just wanting to heighten your awareness of how to be more intentional and not interfere with what's happening. Right.
And I think one of the things, because you brought up the observation part of it, which is important, but also that idea that you don't have to be observing all the time, that if you see children intentionally interacting, the learning is happening. And this is one where it might help, that it doesn't matter if they're talking about things or using specific math or literacy concepts. The fact that they're interacting with their environment, with their peers, you can take that time to mentally, you don't have to be actively engaged
all the time.
Right?
You need to give yourself permission.
And just like you said, when we get bored of free play, it's sometimes because we're not appreciating, like, oh, they're doing great. They're still really into this. Mm-hmm. I can, whatever it is, sit back and just be, in case something happens, but, whatever, like having, those are the down times.
Yeah.
If you feel like you have to do something.
I always tell teachers, when you try to teach all day, I just think about a kindergarten class or a first grade teacher or a second grade teacher, and in many cases, a preschool teacher. You feel like you have to teach and be in control all day. It's exhausting.
Right.
If you just follow their interests and provide opportunities for them to do what they're interested in doing and have the materials for them to explore on their own, it's not as exhausting. It becomes more joyful.
Right.
Yeah. So, we've covered a lot, Mike. So I really love this concept of what was the name of it again? Embodied.
Yeah, embodied cognition is the psychology.
So embodied cognition. Go look that up. Get more on it. Mike has given us a great introduction to it. And really, if you could value what children are doing instead of worrying about what they're learning, I think we'd go a long way.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Okay, stay right there while I close this out.
Yeah.
So to learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.